Hi everyone, Bandana here, I hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're taking a look at the release version of Sons of Valhalla. Many thanks to Pixel Chest and Hooded Horse for the key so I could review the game. So as many of you might remember, I tried the demo for this game and I didn't really like it very much. It didn't really seem like my kind of thing. In fairness to the final release, it's actually won me over. However, it comes with a few caveats. So its tagline on Steam is a combat and base building game in the Viking Age. Build a fortress and lay siege to enemy strongholds, gather warriors and board longboats and engage in personal combat as you raid and conquer across England. My no-nonsense description would be a little bit different to that. It's a 2D side-scrolling game based around Viking mythology, where as a Viking lord you are trying to find your wife with the help of Odin. You must build a base, then push towards the right of the map, taking control of enemy settlements to expand your territory and thus increase your building area with the aim of getting to a boss fight at the end. There are no longboats involved that you actually directly interact with, so I'm not sure why that one's in the description. I will note immediately that there is one very random mission that's different to this formula, which I kind of enjoyed, but I know from Steam reviews some people were not so keen, and I'll explain why I think that is a little bit later in the video. Now, admittedly, currently the reviews on Steam are mixed, and I can kind of understand why. Many of the comments are pretty fair, and I'll discuss this during the video as well. So, in terms of the story, I really don't want to spoil it, because I actually think the narrative of the game is really good, and the voice acting is pretty well done. It actually left me wanting more from the story than the game had to offer, as it's actually fairly short, which I think is a shame, because the story itself was actually really good, and I wish that had gone on for longer than it did. Alright, so on to the gameplay, which is going to be a fairly long section. So it has a fairly simple gameplay loop at its base. You start with nothing but basic resources and a few troops, and your hero character. You must then gather resources via resource buildings, which are in this case a fishing hut and a lumber mill, and you also get some resources from home when a longship arrives at the main town port. Your aim is to push right to reach the boss at the end of the map. Think like Super Mario Bros. Your way is blocked by enemy forces who control the outposts and towns between you and the boss on the level. To get to the other side of the level, well, you can fight with your hero unit, who gets reasonably powerful by the end of the game, and also by giving basic commands to your military units. You also collect runes, which you can equip to your special belt that provides you various bonuses, or bonuses to your units or your towns, including some special ability ones for your hero that allow you to do certain power attacks. I will note that while everything else resets, the upgrades for your hero and the runes your hero collects persist throughout the game. Now you can build a variety of troops, including archers, swordsmen, blacksmiths who have big hammers and are effective against buildings. You can also, in later levels, get a healer, a shield maiden, and a berserker type unit, as well as battering rams and catapults for siege engines. These can all have various upgrades researched at their production building, but for some very frustrating reason, these upgrades do not apply to the already produced units, and you can't delete those units or send them back to the base for training, so you can only really suicide them if you want upgraded ones. This one was a poor design choice in my opinion by the devs. I think that if you do an upgrade at the base in this type of game, where you're not going to be sending or selling those troops, they should just get the upgrades. Also, to produce units, you must go all the way back to the base, use the building yourself, and spawn them from there. Even with fast travel, this is a bit of a faff when you're trying to push forward. It could really do with a UI addition that lets you request troops from the front line like you would get in most RTS games. At the outposts that you capture, as opposed to the towns, you can purchase a single mercenary per outpost, either a healer, a hunter, which is like an advanced archer, or a pyro guy that loves throwing firebombs. Again, you could really do with a UI upgrade here to hire these from the front line, as currently you have to go to the exact individual outpost to repurchase the mercenary if one of them dies. Problem is, you have no idea which one that is, so you get to waste a few minutes fast traveling to each of them to find out which one you can buy your mercenary at. So that definitely needs a rethink. In terms of the commands you can give to these units, it's limited to units that are near your hero and consist of either follow with all units, or you can break that down by unit type. You can set hold position, all units. You can activate a shield wall when there are shielded units available in your selection area. And then you can also attack with all, or you can attack once again broken down by unit type. Okay, so I guess at this point it's good time to discuss one of the main complaints on Steam, which is that you basically mainly end up relying on your hero and using special abilities and power attacks because the base attack does little to nothing and the units you get overall are rather weak. And in fairness to these comments on Steam, they're not wrong. I did spend most of the game doing a power attack followed by a dodge roll, followed by a power attack, followed by a dodge roll, with the odd power arrow blast when I got access to it thrown in, or some fire pots, aka flame bombs, added in for good measure. After the first couple of levels, I realised that the units you get are mostly useless unless you fully upgrade them and have access to as many as possible. So my strategy became quite simple. Build nothing but fishing huts and lumber mills at the main city. Each time you upgrade the mead hall, you can build 2 more buildings. So another one of each, a maximum of 3 times. Then use my hero to battle through the first outpost and town, and then that second town that I capture, I would build all the military production buildings and another lumber mill. And here I would start doing all of the military upgrades. Then I would take the next outpost by myself usually, and then on the final town I would use the military units to help grind down the gate and take the final town, then again build military buildings just so I can spawn units closer to the front line, and this would mean I would have the full 50 unit slots. Though it should be noted that most units take 3 points to build, there was a couple that took 2 by the end, and any siege weapons took 5, so 50 doesn't actually go that far. As you can imagine, this would get quite monotonous very quickly. The game only has 6 missions though, so over 6 missions it's actually not bad, and to some extent it was enjoyable figuring that out for those few missions. However, the reality is once I had that worked out, I wouldn't really want to continue playing the game, so unless they change things up, it's probably the length it should be. I will make a quick note that until your main character, your hero unit, is upgraded, it's very hard to do this pattern. For the first couple of missions, you still need to rely on the troops a little bit early on. However, caveat time. I turned the game down to easy because otherwise it was too much of a grind. I do not think I could have stomached playing all the way through on normal or harder, because when I tried it on normal the game just became a 2 steps forward, 1 step back situation, and often it was more like 1.5 steps back as your military units just kept dying, and I hate that style of gameplay, and that's a feeling reflected in some of the other Steam reviews as well. As I said in my look at the demo, I do think some people really enjoy that kind of gameplay, but yeah, playing through it on a harder difficulty definitely wouldn't be for me. Anyhow, each of these main missions ends in a boss fight. All the bosses are slightly different. I wouldn't say they were super hard, but they have a variety of attacks, which means you had to change up your pattern of combat, though truth be told, much like the standard levels, it was power attacks with dodges and power attacks and dodges, maybe the odd arrow thrown in to finish them off. Interestingly, the enemies, or the bosses, were able to utilize some of the environment to help them in the fight. It would have been nice if there was some way that you could utilize the environment as well to damage the bosses. Just a thought for any future games that these guys make. So there's one other mission that's completely different from the others, and it's based around stealth. And without spoiling anything story-wise, it was very unexpected. I kind of enjoyed it, even though it was a bit basic in terms of the stealth and stuff. A few people really disliked it. And I think that's for 2 reasons. Firstly, it's a single one of these missions rather than a few interspersed throughout the game. Secondly, it is vastly different from the gameplay of the other missions, almost like it's from a totally different game. And as a result, I guess it feels a little random. It's almost like a mission I would expect interspersed in a side-scrolling action-adventure game, which, to some extent, that is part of what this game is. But having the RTS aspect as a major part, sort of the main gameplay, makes it out of place. So in essence, the base gameplay is like a very basic RTS with a hero unit doing most of the heavy lifting. Rather weak units are in support of it until they are fully upgraded, but even then it's more about having mass numbers than it is about them being strong. It also has a Horde mode, though I really didn't enjoy it. I do love tower defense games and things like that, but this one was not doing it for me at all. You start out from scratch with nothing, the troops are very weak as discussed above, so you resort to using them as a buffer while trying to do your own power attacks with your sword. Each wave you win gives you a choice of 3 runes, though it does not say that's a choice anywhere. I just found out after picking up the first one, and the other 2 vanished. I assumed I would be allowed to pick up all 3. Oops. The waves get progressively harder, but your units will never keep up, and I'm not sure how your hero would keep up either. It just seems very unbalanced. Maybe it's just a skill issue on my part. In terms of the sound, the game has great music, fantastic sound effects, some very good voice acting. I quite like the environmental sound effects as well. Graphically, the game looks really nice. Pixel art it may be, but this is very nice to look at, and the effects of the abilities, etc, etc are really well done. You will also notice that all through the game the maps have water at the very bottom, like in front of your screen. I think that's 3D, and it has reflections, and it may seem really random, but this looks very nice, especially with the lighting effects of different time of day. They've done a really good job with that. It's very pretty. In summary, Sons of Valhalla is a game that feels as though it's trying to be 2 genres at once. A basic RTS base building game and a side-scrolling action game. And while putting the 2 together is a fun idea, sadly the result here is that both sides kind of struggle a little bit to reach their potential. On the RTS side, the units feel like they fail to do anything meaningful, and choices are very limited. While on the hero side, you kind of get stuck into using the same couple of power attacks to progress, as the special upgrade runes are limited, and the base attack tickles at most. I think the main campaign of the game is really fun, I think the narrative is really good, and I love the art. And due to the narrative, I enjoyed playing through the game once, but I couldn't imagine ever playing through the game again. You don't unlock anything special like a rune at the end to make the next playthrough different, so why would I do it? I think the gameplay as it is palatable in this state because the game is short. I completed the game in around 6.5 hours. I think any longer and it would have just been too repetitive or grindy even on easy. And the Horde mode was too unbalanced to be fun currently, skill issues aside. Which leads me to another caveat. I think this game is overpriced for the content that's available. Coming in at $20 US or £18 with currently an extra 10% off that, I really think a better price would have been about £10 for this. I think not only would the game sell better at that price, but I also think it would get less negative reviews on Steam and less refunds. I would not have been happy if I paid £18 for this game. Score-wise, ignoring the price, I think I would give the game itself a 3 out of 5 for the fantastic narrative, the graphics, and in fact the gameplay, as long as it's only those 6 missions, because I really wouldn't want to play much more than that. I will say, I agree with some of the Steam reviews. I think there is room for improvement in this game. Whether that would push it up to a $20, £18 price tag, I'm not sure. I think as with any video game pricing, it's kind of an individual thing, as I think there are people who are happy with the game and happy with the price they paid. I think video game pricing is getting more and more wildly varied throughout the industry, and that's another video entirely. So I will leave this one there. Have you tried the game? What did you think yourself? Let us know down in the comments below. As ever, thank you everyone for watching. Please do like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you all soon.